Hi, I'm Anna Runkle, also known as the Crappy Childhood Fairy, and today I'm excited to tell you about a new study that came out last week from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. They found that individuals who experienced high levels of early life stress showed lower levels of brain activation when processing cues, signaling potential loss, and increased responsivity when actually experiencing losses. So that's it. Kind of like not very sensitive when the risk is coming, completely overreactive after the consequences are upon us. Is that familiar to you? All right, well, now we know it's not our fault. So the researchers here, their names are Rasmus Byrne, Barbara Rober, and Seth Pollack. And I just want to say, if you guys are watching, Rasmus, Barbara, and Seth, thank you so much for figuring this out, what happens to us after a high-stress childhood, or what we call around here a crappy childhood. You're saints for working on this, and we really appreciate it. When I found this article, it said that there is a troubling lack of brain activity in people who had a high-stress childhood that makes it difficult for them to predict risk and punishment. But here's the second thing that the study finds, is that not only do we have trouble noticing that that a choice we're making is going to have terrible consequences, but then once the consequences occur, we react to them a lot more intensively and emotionally than a normal person. And I just read this and I'm like, yep, that is exactly what we've noticed. And it's just so helpful to know that there is something measurable in the brain. I can't tell you how many times in my life, because I, especially earlier in my life, had a lot of problems with making choices that completely baffled other people in my life. And I could not see it coming. I would, start dating somebody, and then it would turn out they had a drug problem. And I just somehow wouldn't have been able to see that coming. And then when it was time to get out of that relationship, it would be just so emotionally difficult for me. Whereas I think somebody with a normal childhood would probably go, this isn't a workable relationship, and that would sort of like make it not quite so emotionally tragic to have to leave because it wouldn't be what you want, right? So this explains there's a brain basis for that. And what was so interesting about this study is that the troubling lack of brain activity was correlated with having had a stressful childhood, and it wasn't that much affected by whether life was stressful for the study participants now. It wasn't about their stress level now, it was about what had happened before. So, that does suggest that like what's happened did cause some damage. But I and a lot of people who I work with, we are living proof that you can change what's happening in your brain to a large degree, and what you can't change, you can come up with a workaround. See, I marked it all up. I was really into this. The neuroimaging data revealed that individuals who experienced high levels of childhood stress had reduced activation in a number of brain areas when they were presented with cues that would have helped them anticipate future rewards and losses. So they noticed, so it wasn't just like one area of the brain, and they name all this specific anatomy of the brain that is activated in people who had a low stress childhood that would help a person go, this is a bad choice. And, just something that you could think about as a reference. Say, let's say you're thinking about buying a really expensive birthday present for somebody. And if you buy the present, you're not going to be able to pay the rent. So that would be the sort of thing where you have to be able to predict that a loss is coming, that if you spend $1,000 on a present and you don't have $1,000 to pay rent, you're not going to be able to pay the rent. And what's that going to mean? You could get evicted. So somebody with a high-stress childhood would have a harder time weighing the cost of that. Then, when they do get evicted, they would flip out, right? So in the next video, I'm going to talk about that, about the sort of cycle of that. But to overreact to that and feel like, as I have so many times in the past, like, I didn't even see this coming. Why is this happening to me? When it's actually like a direct result of a behavior that we did and we chose, but we didn't see it coming. So another example would be like, okay, so for example, skipping work. Let's say that I wake up in the morning and I think, I'm really tired, I don't want to go to work today, and I'll call in sick. Now, if my brain were completely functioning like a normal person, I would go, I've already done that. I don't have that much more sick time. If I do that, I'm not going to have enough days off to take the vacation I planned. And And also it's going to really mess up people who are working today who really are counting on me. So I can't predict the punishment or the risk involved, that I would have some sort of difficulty reasoning that out. Then when I get back to work, tomorrow after I've taken the day off and people are angry at me and maybe the boss wants to bring me into the office to talk about it, I would have an extreme overreaction. So these are the brain changes we're talking about in action. One interpretation of this finding is that extremely high levels of childhood stress exposure affect development of the mechanisms that allow individuals to avoid a loss by attending to the magnitude of potential negative consequences. So that is, can't really get a feel for how big a deal is this choice that I'm about to make. They kind of ask the question, maybe there's an overall decline in cognitive abilities or intelligence, and that's not the case. Just as smart as everybody, just as capable of everybody, except in this one area. Another study using a different gambling task also found increased activation within the region to be associated with regret and disappointed. So increased regret and disappointment. Ah, the remorse. One further possibility is that a higher level of emotional response experienced by individuals with high childhood stress following a loss may further undermine their ability to learn from the loss and update their behavior on subsequent events. So man, that is such a disadvantage. But again, don't get discouraged, but it is a double whammy to be able to not predict that our actions and decisions are going to cause problems as big. The problems they're going to cause are bigger than we realize in advance. And then just the heavy heaping of remorse and regret afterwards makes us just, can be so immobilizing, I guess, that extra high dose of remorse and regret afterwards can make it doubly hard to just go, when I do this, I get a really terrible result, and to start to try to do something differently next time. Okay, so what do we do about this? So first, I think we need to accept that if you relate to this data and you feel like this has been happening to you, we just got to accept like our brains are involved with this. And to me, that's good news. I can't tell you how many times in my life people have said stuff like, when I made a bad choice, and I've made many, I guess you just really wanted to repeat your childhood. And I'd think to myself, I guess so, but I don't think so. I never wanted to repeat my childhood. I wanted to have a much better life than that. But from the outside, I guess it would have looked that I was consciously choosing these bad choices. And it's easy to criticize. And I've criticized other people about it and been like, I would never do that, what they're doing. So we got to accept that our brains are involved, and that's a little bit of a disability. Okay. But then we can cultivate a better brain. And there's all kinds of stuff that we can do. And I can tell you what I've done. There's going to be links at the end of the video and in this blog, crappychildhoodfairy.com, to show you how you can reduce the mental chatter, increase your awareness and insight through meditation. I do these things twice a day, and it definitely helps like reduce the symptoms of childhood PTSD and just help me be a little bit more sensitive to the decisions I'm about to make and my reaction to decisions I have made, so that it just kind of brings everything to a calmer level where I can learn from mistakes and I make fewer mistakes. And then another thing is, I think that if our brains are affected, it just kind of proves that we can't do this alone, that part of having this disability is having a little difficulty reasoning things out by ourselves, and that it's really important to have a circle of people whose opinion and experience you can trust and run them by them. If you have a person or two that you can trust to talk to about things when you're trying to make a decision, like, should I go on a date with this person? Is it time to get intimate with them yet? Do I want to quit my job? Should I express my anger to this person? This is all stuff like left to our own devices, we can have really poor judgment. So a community of people, and I say community, but it can be just like one person, or it could be like 3 people who you can talk to, and you can even help each other, because even if you have childhood PTSD, when somebody else is sharing their question with you, it's easier to have good judgment about somebody else because you're not triggered by their stuff. And so you help each other. And so a lot of people enjoy this in like 12-step meetings. And there are other kind of like support groups where people you trust can help you make decisions. Now, if you're going to get help on decisions, this is another point. You got to slow down the decision process. And so part of building awareness is to realize, just to even notice that you're starting to have that familiar sensation that there's risk involved and you're not totally sure. If you can just put a little bit of time interval, if you can become aware that something risky is in front of you and just get a little bit of time to check in with yourself and maybe another person, you have more of an opportunity to compensate for bad judgment and realize, when in doubt, I think I'm going to step back and wait. There is hardly anything in life that really needs to be decided on an urgent basis. And in fact, one of the cues I use that I'm kind of maybe in it is when I have a sense of urgency. I'll feel like angry at somebody and I think, oh, I have to talk to them right now. I have to tell them why I'm so angry. And I've learned if I feel that way, it means do not talk to them right now. Stop, write about it, talk to another person. And 9 times out of 10, I really don't need to say anything to the other person. And when I do need to say something, I have something much, much, much more toned down that's not going to, produce conflict. I'm telling you, when your choices are gentler and a little bit more constructive and moving in the right direction, and your demeanor is calm and considerate and not overreactive, life cannot help but move in a positive direction. So I am so grateful to these folks at University of Wisconsin to just help us understand it's not all about poor character. It's not all about poor psychology. Some of this is a brain change, and that means we can make workarounds. So keep reading the blog. Let's keep working together. I've got a couple videos coming up in the next coming days to talk about what I call the underdog effect of what happens when we have the poor judgment and the distorted thinking, and one on how to reduce intense emotions. So I'll see you there. Thanks.